Good afternoon. This is Ananias Grace with an afternoon break. We can call it a coffee break, but this is Saturday, September the 28th, 2024. And I know it's unusual for Ananias Grace to upload a coffee break on a Saturday. But in trying to hear from the Spirit as to which way to go with the Sunday school lesson for tomorrow morning, it keeps creeping, or it kept creeping back into my mind, Friday's coffee break. You see, the Holy Spirit had been giving me words to say for Friday, and there was always something coming up. Every time I would sit down to start recording or to put more information into it, I would get interrupted. So for one reason or another, I never got to complete the coffee break for Friday. So here is your coffee break for Friday, because I want to follow what the Spirit says, and I need to get it done so I can proceed with Sunday school lesson for tomorrow. I have realized some things through this, trying to get this on, because believe it or not, today has been pretty much the same, many interruptions. But it's okay, because I realized something also, which I'll bring up later. But when you are relying on the Holy Spirit for assistance and whatever it is you're doing, and you hear Him and you got your clear directions on what you should do, and then when you fail to do it, don't think that the Spirit is going to be silent and let you just go. But He's going to keep bringing it back to your remembrance until you get it done. New Living Translation, Galatians 5:25, says, since we are living by the Spirit, let us follow the Spirit's leading in every part of our lives. So here is the break for yesterday being presented today. So now you can get your coffee, your beverage, or whatever it is that you want. By this time, it might be an afternoon snack. But relax and let's talk for a while. I talk, you listen. Hebrews 12th chapter. And it reads, therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before Him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. I like the way the NIV handles the running with endurance. It says, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And that is from the NIV. The one I'm using says, run with endurance the race that has been set before us, or that God set before us. How about that? That's the New Living Translation. Let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. And in whatever translation you read, you notice something, that this race that we are to run, it was marked out. God has said it, but it wasn't of our own doing. This race has been marked and set before us by God. So our discussion today, brief discussion, would be run your own race. And I want to use a track field as our course where we're going to say that we are running on. Now, our track field had to be designed and built using whatever materials they wanted to use. It had to be built by somebody. And we know in the scripture that God is the one who set us on it. So we can assume that God is the one who built this track that we are to run on. Now, sometimes in some of the races that we see, they have obstacles on this racetrack. There may be hurdles. Sometimes there could be a mishap in the pavement or the asphalt or whatever it is that you're running on. But there's sometimes some things that are in the way. And if we keep this point before, that it is God who has set us on it, it is God who has designed it for us, then he already knows when we're going to encounter these things on this track. We can have some hurdles sometimes while we're running this race. Sometimes in running the race, we can listen to people cheering us on, do a good job, or people who say, that wasn't so good, or you might overhear them saying it to somebody else. Few will come to you and say it. So you got the boos and the cheers coming from the bystanders while you're running your race. But you got to keep on running. Sometimes you may have to even watch others. This race that you're running, and you think you're running for one particular thing, and you see somebody else getting it before you get it, and you want to sometimes think, why am I running? But you got to remember, that's their race. That was not your race. So sometimes you can get off track. Now on this track here, they have lines that are painted down and lanes. And you need to run your race by staying in your own lane. Don't get sidetracked by looking at somebody else's race that they're running in their lane, and you lose focus because you're paying too much attention to how somebody else is running their race. Now, on this racetrack that has been designed for us, we know that we're going to be encounter some things. We talked about the hurdles. And sometimes when we get to those hurdles, we know we got to jump higher. We got to come from the level that we are on and go a little higher to get on over that hurdle. I like to believe that God put that hurdle there, because sometimes we can get so stagnated in what we're doing ho-hum every day that he wants to see just how much do you want this race? How much do you want to win it? So I'm going to let this hurdle drop right down here in this spot, and I'm going to watch when she gets to it. Is she going to praise me louder? Is she going to pray louder? Is she going to fashion herself so that she can get over that hurdle so she can continue to run that race that is set before her? And even sometimes there might be a bend in your lane, which means you got to curve around a little. And sometimes when you do that curving around just a little bit, you might bump into somebody when you curve around. And sometimes in our lives, when other people are running this race that we are running, but they're running their own race, we might run so close together that it looks like we're going to knock each other off the track. But when we get closer together and running our race, we need to learn to encourage the person that is on each side of us. Let them know, I'm running this race too, and you come on and you keep on running with me. There might be some bumps, some things that might make us stumble, but we're not going to fall, because we have these witnesses that they talk about in the 11th chapter that we need sometimes to go back and read about. And even if we do stumble and fall, hey, we can get back up. I'm right in the midst of studying about Abraham, and I know I've said it before, but I'm going to stay there until God says you got it, because for some reason I ain't got it yet, so he still has me with Abraham. I did something. I had some words that come out of my mouth that were not pleasant, and as you probably know now, whereas my mouth might be used to speak these things to you in on these coffee breaks, but sometimes my mouth opens and I need to have shut it. And so I felt like I had blown it again. But God reminded me that one of the witnesses is Abraham. And he showed me how Abraham failed, how Abraham laughed, how Abraham spoke lies out of his mouth. But Abraham still believed God, so Abraham still stayed on the track, and he kept on running that race so him and Sarah could get that promise that he was running for. So when you fall and mess up, that's okay. Get back up, because you got witnesses there that failed too, but they got back up on the track and kept running. He already knows when we are going to be tempted to come off and just sit on the sidelines and say, I got enough of it. Well, guess what? He got Moses there to let us know he got to that point also. But Moses was trying to get the people to the promised land. So Moses knew he had to get back on that track. Regardless of what he encountered with the people, he still had to keep running on that track that has been specifically designed for him. The track that we are running on, God designed it. He tested it. He proved it. Because God wants us to be winners. So he didn't put a track in front of us that would make us fall. He put one there where we are assured to win. And when we get to the point where we think we can't, he set witnesses there to let us know we ain't the only one that ever got to this point and wanted to throw our hands up and say, no more. He put lanes in it. And I guess this is where we get the statement that says, stay in your own lane. But it's important here that God placed you in the race, and he placed you in that lane that you have to run in. The instructions are so simple. It tells us that we are to lay aside every weight. You can't run weighted down. You got to lay it aside, because some of the weights we're carrying are heavier than others. And see, this thing where we are to work out our own soul salvation, God needs all the weights to go away and for us to run our race. Because sometimes the people that we are carrying, they got to get up and get in their own track, run their own race with endurance. We're there to help them as long as they come beside us and we can encourage them. He says that, and the sin which so easily ensnares us. Some of us, we must admit, we got some things about ourselves that have been there so long, and we might not know it. But sometimes people on the outside are seeing it and know that we've been ensnared with something that needs to be off of us, because it'll trip you up. You might get right there at the finish line, and you got this fear that you never got rid of, and you fall. So it says, the sin that so easily ensnare us, we got to lay that aside and run with endurance the race that is set before us. Run your race that is set before you. Run your race that has been marked out for you. Run your race that God set there for you to run and has placed you in this race that you have got to run. And part of those scriptures, it says that we got to keep looking unto Jesus. How are we told to run? Looking unto Jesus. It says because he's an example for us, because he's the author and the finisher. And for the joy that was set before him, he ran his race. He ran his race. And now he's sitting down at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus ran his race, so you and I are able to run ours if we keep our eyes focused upon God. And with the help of the Holy Spirit, because he is your helper, we will be able to take the bend, jump over the hurdles, look at the bumps in the road. The cracks won't make us fall. We won't be tempted to come off. We won't get tired because we're not running on our own strength. We're running because this track has been set before us. And people, the track, the race that God has set before us will take us from where we are to where he is, and we will live with him. How about that? Your break today is simple. Stay in your lane and run your race. Not your mama's race, not your children's race. As a matter of fact, let the children know they can't run your race. Not the people beside you, not the people in front of you, behind, not the cheerers, not the booers, the naysayers. Don't get distracted with them. When they looking at you, you just tell them. And they wonder what's going on with you. Tell them you're running your race, and you cannot afford to be distracted. Read Hebrews 11 and 12 and see the witnesses that God has placed in that book to let us know that you can run your race. Think about it. Noah's race was to get the ark. Noah was not given the promised son that Abraham had. Neither was Abraham told to build the ark. They had their own race to run. So run your race. This is Saturday. How about that? This is your Friday coffee break on Saturday afternoon. And remember, we love you.